You wake up every morning carrying invisible weight, the weight of thoughts that won't stop, the weight of problems that won't solve, the weight of a world that demands everything from you but gives you nothing that lasts. You've tried everything to find peace. You've read the books, you've said the prayers, you've followed the formulas, but something is still missing. Something deeper than knowledge, something more powerful than technique, something that transforms not just your circumstances, but your very understanding of what you are. Because once you see this truth, you can never unsee it. If you sense there's a power within you that you've never fully accessed, subscribe. Because this channel exists for those ready to discover what lies beyond the surface of spiritual seeking. 1. The great misunderstanding about spiritual power. Most people think the Holy Spirit is something outside themselves that they need to reach for, pray to, or convince to help them. This is the fundamental error that keeps billions trapped in spiritual poverty while surrounded by infinite abundance. The Holy Spirit is not a separate entity floating somewhere in the heavens waiting for your requests. The Holy Spirit is the very consciousness you are reading these words with right now. It is the intelligence that beats your heart without your permission. It is the wisdom that heals your cuts without your instruction. It is the power that grows your hair, digests your food, and dreams your dreams while you sleep. Joel Goldsmith spent decades discovering what the mystics have always known. The Holy Spirit is life itself when it is unobstructed by human interference. It is not something you get. It is something you are. It is not something you use. It is something that uses you when you stop blocking it with personal will and desire. Think of electricity in your home. You don't create it. You don't control it. You simply provide the conditions for it to flow. When you flip a switch, light appears, not because you made light, but because you remove the obstacle to light. The Holy Spirit operates exactly the same way in consciousness. But here's what changes everything about how you approach spiritual living. The moment you stop trying to get something from the Holy Spirit and start letting the Holy Spirit get something through you, every limitation you've ever experienced begins to dissolve. You don't become powerful. You discover that power itself is what you've always been. 2. Why your prayers haven't been working. You've been praying to the wrong address. You've been asking God to change your circumstances instead of asking God to change your understanding of your circumstances. You've been trying to use spiritual power to fix human problems instead of recognizing that there are no human problems when viewed from spiritual consciousness. Every prayer that begins with, "Please God, make this happen," or "Please God, take this away," is a prayer based on the illusion that God is separate from you and that your circumstances are separate from divine perfection. But the Holy Spirit doesn't operate in the realm of human problems. It operates in the realm of divine solutions that already exist. True prayer is not asking for things. True prayer is recognizing what is already true in divine consciousness and allowing that truth to become your experience. When Jesus said, "Ask and you shall receive," he wasn't talking about asking for material changes. He was talking about asking for spiritual recognition of what God has already given. Consider a movie theater. If you don't like what's on the screen, you don't try to change the screen. You change the film in the projector. Your circumstances are the screen. Your consciousness is the projector. The Holy Spirit is the perfect film that's always available to project. Yet here's what most people never realize about the nature of spiritual demonstration. The very thing you're praying to have removed from your life is often the exact vehicle the Holy Spirit is using to awaken you to your true nature. Your challenge isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Your problem isn't your punishment, it's your classroom. 3. The death of the personal self. There is a moment in every awakened life when you realize that the person you thought you were never actually existed. The worried mind, the seeking personality, the one who has problems and needs solutions. This is not who you are. This is who you thought you were while you were dreaming the dream of separation. The personal self is nothing more than a collection of thoughts, memories, fears, and desires that you've mistaken for your identity. But thoughts come and go. Memories fade. Fears dissolve. Desires change. What remains constant is the consciousness that observes all of these temporary phenomena. This consciousness is your true identity. This consciousness is what the Holy Spirit actually is. Joel Goldsmith taught that spiritual awakening is not about improving the personal self. It's about recognizing that the personal self is an optical illusion created by focusing on the waves instead of the ocean. You are not a wave trying to become more spiritual. You are the ocean temporarily experiencing itself as a wave. When this recognition dawns, everything changes. You stop trying to fix your life and start letting life live itself as you. You stop trying to find God and recognize that God is what's been looking through your eyes all along. You stop seeking the Holy Spirit and realize that the Holy Spirit is what's been seeking expression through you since the moment you were born. Think of an actor who has become so identified with their character that they've forgotten their acting. The moment they remember they're an actor, they stop trying to solve the character's problems and start enjoying the performance. But here's the paradox that liberates you from all seeking. The personal self that dies was never real to begin with. What you thought you were losing was never actually there. What you discover beneath the illusion of the personal self is what you've always been. Infinite consciousness temporarily wearing the costume of human experience. 4. How divine intelligence operates. Divine intelligence doesn't think its way to solutions the way human intelligence does. It simply knows what needs to happen and moves through those who are clear enough to receive its guidance. It doesn't analyze problems. It recognizes perfection where human consciousness sees imperfection. The Holy Spirit operates from a completely different level of awareness than human thought. Human thought sees parts. Divine intelligence sees wholes. Human thought sees problems. Divine intelligence sees opportunities. Human thought sees separation. Divine intelligence sees unity. Human thought sees past and future. Divine intelligence sees only the eternal now. When you align with divine intelligence, you don't become smarter in human terms. You become available to wisdom that transcends human thinking altogether. Decisions become obvious. Timing becomes perfect. Resources appear exactly when needed. People show up at precisely the right moment. What humans call miracles become the natural flow of life. But divine intelligence doesn't operate through force or struggle. It operates through what Goldsmith called the gentle art of spiritual living. It doesn't push against resistance. It dissolves resistance by revealing that what appeared to be obstacles were actually stepping stones. Consider water flowing down a mountain. It doesn't fight the rocks. It doesn't argue with the landscape. It simply finds the path of least resistance and flows naturally toward its destination. Divine intelligence operates exactly the same way through consciousness. Yet here's what makes divine intelligence completely different from human planning. Divine intelligence always knows the end from the beginning. It doesn't work toward solutions because it sees from the place where all solutions already exist. When you align with this intelligence, you stop working toward your good and start working from your good. 5. The secret of effortless action. There is a way to live where everything flows, where right action happens without strain, where perfect words come without thinking, where ideal timing unfolds without planning. This is what the Taoists called Wu Wei, action without action. This is what Goldsmith called living by grace instead of by law. But effortless action doesn't mean no action. It means action that arises from alignment rather than from resistance. It means doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done in the way it needs to be done, without the friction of personal will opposing divine will. Most people exhaust themselves trying to make things happen through human effort. They force doors that aren't ready to open. They push against rivers that are flowing in the opposite direction. They plant seeds in winter and wonder why nothing grows. But those who understand the Holy Spirit learn to recognize the rhythm of divine timing and move in harmony with it. When you act from alignment with the Holy Spirit, you become like a surfer riding a perfect wave. The power isn't coming from you. The power is coming through you. You're not creating the momentum. You're simply staying balanced on the force that's carrying you toward your destination. If these words are awakening something you've always known but never been able to name, subscribe. Not for entertainment, but for the remembrance of who you truly are. Think of a master archer. They don't force the arrow to hit the target. They become so still, so centered, so aligned that when they release the arrow, hitting the target becomes inevitable. The Holy Spirit operates through those who have learned this quality of spiritual archery. Here's what happens when you master the art of effortless action. You discover that the universe has been waiting for you to get out of your own way. Every struggle you've ever experienced was simply divine flow, meeting human resistance. When you remove the resistance, what remains is pure flow expressing itself as your life. 6. Why suffering is optional. Suffering is not caused by circumstances. Suffering is caused by resistance to circumstances. Pain is inevitable in human experience. Suffering is optional. The moment you understand this distinction, you hold the key to unshakable peace, regardless of what appears to be happening around you. The Holy Spirit never suffers because the Holy Spirit never resists. It doesn't judge circumstances as good or bad. It doesn't label experiences as wanted or unwanted. It simply responds to whatever is with perfect love, perfect wisdom, and perfect action. When you learn to see through the eyes of the Holy Spirit, you discover that every situation is perfect for your spiritual growth. But this doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent to life. It means you become responsive instead of reactive. It means you act from clarity instead of from confusion. It means you love instead of fear, even when, especially when, fear seems like the logical response. Joel Goldsmith discovered that every moment of suffering contains within it an invitation to deeper surrender. Every experience of pain is calling you to let go of some attachment, some belief, some way of thinking that is no longer serving your highest good. Suffering is not punishment. Suffering is curriculum. Consider a tree in a storm. The branches that resist the wind break. The branches that bend with the wind survive. But the root system remains unmoved regardless of what's happening above ground. The Holy Spirit is your root system. When you're anchored in this consciousness, you can bend with any storm without breaking. Yet here's what transforms your entire relationship to difficult experiences. The moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How is this serving my awakening?" you discover that the Holy Spirit has been using every challenge in your life to liberate you from the illusions that were keeping you in prison. 7. The practice of presence. Presence is not something you do. Presence is something you are when you stop doing everything else. It's not a technique to be mastered. It's your natural state to be uncovered. It's not a spiritual achievement to be earned. It's a birthright to be claimed. The Holy Spirit exists only in the present moment. It doesn't dwell in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. It doesn't operate in the realm of memory or imagination. It lives, moves, and has its being in the eternal now. When you learn to live here too, you discover that this moment contains everything you've ever needed. But presence requires the death of psychological time. It requires releasing the story of who you were and the fantasy of who you might become. It requires showing up fully to what is instead of living in what was or what could be. This is why presence feels like death to the ego and like birth to the soul. In presence, problems don't get solved. They dissolve. Questions don't get answered. They become irrelevant. Conflicts don't get resolved. They reveal themselves to be illusions. Presence doesn't change what's happening. Presence changes your relationship to what's happening, which changes everything. Think of sunlight. It doesn't struggle to illuminate darkness. It simply shows up, and darkness ceases to exist. Presence operates exactly the same way in consciousness. When you're truly present, problems don't need to be fixed because you see that they were never actually there. But here's the secret that makes presence accessible to anyone. You don't have to learn how to be present. You only have to stop practicing absence. You don't have to acquire presence. You only have to stop identifying with the thoughts and emotions that take you away from presence. 8. The dissolution of fear. Fear is not the opposite of love. Fear is the absence of love, just as darkness is the absence of light. You don't fight darkness. You turn on the light. You don't fight fear. You remember love. And the moment you remember love, fear dissolves like ice in warm water. But the love that dissolves fear is not human love. Human love is conditional, selective, and limited. The love that conquers fear is divine love, the unconditional, all-inclusive, infinite love that the Holy Spirit is. This love doesn't come and go based on circumstances. This love is the very fabric of existence itself. Fear exists only when you forget what you are, when you remember that you are consciousness itself temporarily wearing the costume of human experience. What is there to fear? Can consciousness be harmed? Can awareness be threatened? Can the Holy Spirit be diminished by any human circumstance? Every fear you've ever experienced has been based on the illusion that you are separate from your source, separate from love, separate from life itself. But separation is impossible in reality. Separation exists only in imagination. The Holy Spirit is the recognition that separation has never actually occurred. Joel Goldsmith taught that perfect love casts out fear not by fighting it, but by occupying the same space fear was occupying. Light doesn't battle darkness. Light simply shows up, and darkness is revealed to have been nothing more than the temporary absence of light. Think of a child afraid of monsters under the bed. The parent doesn't fight the monsters. The parent turns on the light and shows the child that what appeared to be monsters were actually familiar objects, casting unfamiliar shadows. Yet here's what makes this love immediately accessible to you right now. You don't have to generate this love. You don't have to earn this love. You don't have to become worthy of this love. This love is what you are. Fear dissolves the moment you stop trying to protect the illusory self and remember the invulnerable self that you've always been. 9. Living from the source. There comes a moment when you realize you've been living from effects instead of from cause. You've been trying to manipulate circumstances instead of aligning with the source of all circumstances. You've been rearranging the furniture of human experience instead of dwelling in the consciousness that creates all experience. Living from the source means recognizing that your good doesn't come from people, places, or things. Your good comes from the inexhaustible supply of divine consciousness that you are. Your security doesn't depend on external conditions. Your security comes from the unshakable knowledge that you are one with the source of all security. When you live from the source, you stop being a victim of circumstances and become a creator of circumstances. Not through human will or effort, but through alignment with the divine will that is always seeking to express itself as perfect harmony, perfect love, and perfect abundance. The source never runs dry. The source never fails. The source never withholds its good from anyone. If you're experiencing lack in any area of your life, it's not because the source is limited. It's because something in your consciousness is blocking the natural flow of divine supply. Think of a spring of fresh water. The spring doesn't create water. The spring simply allows water to flow from its source through the opening. You are the opening. The Holy Spirit is the source. Divine good is the water that flows when nothing blocks the channel. But here's what happens when you truly understand that you are living from an infinite source. You stop competing with others for limited good because you recognize that the source of all good is unlimited. You stop hoarding resources because you know that giving and receiving are one movement in consciousness. You stop fearing loss because you understand that what comes from the source can never be depleted. 10. The truth that sets you free. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You are not someone trying to find God. You are God expressing itself as someone. You are not seeking the Holy Spirit. You are the Holy Spirit seeking expression through the instrument of your individuality. This is the truth that sets you free from every form of spiritual seeking, every type of human suffering, every belief in limitation or separation. This is the recognition that ends the search because it reveals that what you were seeking was never lost. What you were trying to become, you already are. What you were hoping to find, you already have. But this truth is not just a concept to be understood intellectually. This truth is a reality to be lived, breathed, and embodied in every moment of your human experience. It's not enough to know this truth. You must become this truth. You must live from this truth. You must let this truth live as you. When this recognition is complete, you don't disappear as an individual. You discover what true individuality actually is. You become a unique expression of the one divine consciousness, bringing your own special flavor to the infinite symphony of existence. You are both completely yourself and completely God simultaneously. The search is over. The journey is complete. The prodigal son has returned home. And what you discover is that you never actually left. The separation was a dream. The seeking was a story. The suffering was an illusion. What remains when all stories end is what was there before all stories began. The pure, unlimited, eternal consciousness that you are. Joel Goldsmith spent his life pointing to this simple truth. The kingdom of heaven is not a place you go to. The kingdom of heaven is what you are. The Holy Spirit is not something you acquire. The Holy Spirit is something you recognize yourself to be. Peace is not something you find. Peace is something you are when you stop looking for it everywhere else. The world will continue to offer you 1,000 reasons to forget this truth. But now you know. And once you know, you can never unknow. You can only remember more deeply, live more fully, and love more completely from the consciousness of your true identity. If this message has awakened you to the truth of what you are, subscribe, not for more content, but for continued remembrance, not for information, but for transformation. Not because you need another video, but because you're ready to live as the eternal truth that you've always been. The Holy Spirit is not something you understand. The Holy Spirit is something you are, and you are something the Holy Spirit is. This is the truth. This is the way. This is the life that sets you free.